Greetings. I'm very happy that I have you with us at this very important strategic discussion. Respected Dr. Abdul Qayyum Sajjadi, Member of the Parliament, respected Nasrullah Stanekzai, University lecturer and an expert of the political matters, respected Mutmain, also political expert, is in this discussion with us. I'd like to start with the changes or the end of US elections, and we'll talk about this, that the new president is now taken over and how much it will affect the reconciliation or the peace talks of Afghanistan. So if we start with a question directed at all the three distinguished guests at this program with us, Joe Biden and Trump, what's the difference between both of them? And as to how the peace talks shall be carried forward, the fact that the president has changed and is not anymore Trump and is going to be Biden now. So I'd like to start with respected Nasrullah. If he could please tell us as to how it will be, or will there be any changes. Would like to pass my greetings to you and to the distinguished viewers and our respected panel members. I would like to say that from the strategic viewpoint, United States of America is trying to end this very lengthy war in the history of the United States of America, and to leave Afghanistan in a dignified manner. So it doesn't matter if it is Trump, Joe Biden, or US politicians, but from the strategic viewpoint, there will not be any in-depth change in this, or it will happen as far as Afghanistan is concerned. So yeah, the policies and tactics might change from my viewpoint. Well, Trump was Republican and kind of a conservative policies they had, and those countries that follow liberalism sort of believe in it, and we've seen it in the history of the liberal approaches that they have, for instance, on human right or freedom, civil freedom, and others, have had sort of agreements and compromise. So yeah, you can consider a different position from a new president, and that will have an effect on these negotiations with the Taliban, also in contact with Afghanistan. So what we are talking about is these values, and it can change. The U.S. Special Envoy, respected Khalil Zad, might be replaced, because we know that in the last 2 months has not had very productive work as was expected from him. The other thing, as for Trump is concerned, in a calculated or non-calculated manner, wanted to have its forces leave Afghanistan. You could expect different from Biden. Biden will think more about it. And as for the relation with NATO and the EU countries is concerned, the United States of America will come closer with EU and the European countries. In any case, I think the policies will change. Tactically, there will be changes. So Khalil Zad might change, and the fact that with the change in Khalil Zad's position, so it will have an effect. So what do you see? I mean, what do you think Joe Biden as the new president of the United States of America, and what effect it will have on the peace negotiations? In the name of Allah, the entirely abundantly merciful, the specially merciful, I'd like to pass my greetings to respected Nasrullah, to respected Sajjadi, and to you, and like to thank Afghanistan Institute for Strategic Studies for this opportunity. As for the policy of the United States of America is concerned, it is set for many years. Joe Biden is someone who's already served as the vice president with Barack Obama, And during the time of Barack Obama, he had already announced that he will take the forces out of Afghanistan and he will stop the fight in Afghanistan. But at the same time, he was very much rushing for signing that bilateral security agreement with Afghanistan. Now, the fact that Biden will come, it will be most probably that he'll be following the policies from the time of Barack Obama. At that time, there was a lot of pressure from the generals. The fact that it was related to this war. Obama was not able to, although he had said that by 2014 all the forces will leave Afghanistan and that the war will end in Afghanistan, but was not able to do it. Now the fact that the Biden has come as the president, so the contract between the United States of America and Taliban, that will help Joe Biden to direct its policies in a proper manner. So from my viewpoint, Joe Biden in the region Joe Biden is going to look for peace in the region, and that should have good effect on the neighboring countries and on Afghanistan. But well, if you look at Taliban, we earlier said Joe Biden was the vice president during the time of Barack Obama. They tried with their military force and they were not able to succeed against Taliban. And they knew that they were not able to win it with the military power. Now the fact that there is a peace agreement, it doesn't matter either Khalilzad or anyone else, that this will be carried forward, and based on the agreement between US and Taliban, it will be implemented. One of the problems that we'll be facing in the future is that Biden will count much on Pakistan, and they'll be looking at the issues of Afghanistan from the lenses of Pakistan. And on the other hand, India, who that was not happy and was one of the side, will be ignored by Biden. And the other thing is Iran. Iran, I mean, will certainly have its effect as for the policies inside Afghanistan are concerned. They have their influence. They interfere inside Afghanistan. So with all the agreements that were made during the time of Barack Obama, Biden will prefer them than following or pursuing the sanctions of the times of Trump. So we can say the fact that Biden has come, the peace agreement will be implemented between the US and Taliban, and this will be a big achievement. And there will be change in the region as far as their policies are concerned. And I'm talking about the United States of America. India will unfortunately, Pakistan will have more influence, will be able to interfere more, and Iran will also be able to interfere more. Ustad Sajjadi, we also would like to hear from you about this new news of the world, which is Joe Biden being elected as the president of the United States of America, and how it will affect the issue of war and peace. In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, would like to wish you all good health. All the distinguished friends, all of you who can hear me. Our respected friends have already mentioned some really important points. I would like to share a few issues on this matter. Thing is that I think a lot of countries they very much develop their international policies and foreign policies, and in kind of countries that they are in sort of a policy and system they have. So they have their proper understanding of their long-term policy. They understand the environments inside and outside the countries. Now. Afghanistan's international issues are more affected by the international factors than the local factors, because we said that a lot of countries may have a lot of effect of the local factors as for their policy concerned, but for Afghanistan it's more affected by the international factors. And at the same time, you could particularly mention the United States of America. So changes that happen in the United States of America have direct effect on Afghanistan, war and peace in Afghanistan, and also have the effect on the future of Afghanistan. But the fact what changes will be between Trump and Biden, as for the matter of Afghanistan is concerned, as was mentioned. So the institutionalization of the foreign policies, firmness of the decision. I think individuals will play very little role, because individuals will play very little role, considering the fact that they've already developed a proper system in that can be looked at from the bigger policy levels of the countries. But yeah, it certainly has effect. The difference of an individual from Trump to Biden uh, could not be much. But then again, the differences that these two people have, I would quickly like to refer to. Uh, Biden, on the international relations, is going to be different than Trump. I think his foreign policy priority will be to revive once again a lot of things that during the time of Trump were brought into question. So he will try and revive them. As for the prestige and the dignity is concerned, because things that Trump did kind of brought the prestige or the status of the United States of America under question. It was more unilateral sort of policies. It was reflected across the world. So what Biden will try, so the new liberalistic that they and their party believe in, so they will try and reflect this picture on the public mindset. And on Afghanistan matter, one of the consequences it will have is that it will be tried for making sure that the resolution of the Afghanistan matter with the participation of the countries involved shall be tried for making sure that we can reach a regional and international consensus. So it means that they'll be trying to bring in the other countries of the region and international community into this matter to try and solve it with the regional international consensus. And I think with the policies from Joe Biden, this process, the process will change as for how work used to happen during the time of Trump, sort of a propaganda and other things. So, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, there is a unanimity of views, but we will see changes as to how these dialogues are managed. We'll come back to our discussion. Our viewers are watching it about this issue as to what Taliban want. Respected Stanixai, it's 2 months since Taliban are in negotiation with the delegation from the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, but they still have not made any progress. This will be a general question if I ask it this way, what Taliban want. But let's give another subcategory of a question. What do you think? How do you see this negotiation happening in Qatar now? Do you really think that people will get to peace this way or not? Well, it showed one of the facts. The 2-month negotiation that happened in Doha, the hope that both the negotiation team had was very much weakened. Ustad Sajjadi referred in his points. Trump tried at the same time to use this for his electoral campaign, but the result that Trump was expecting, he was not able to get to that result. The negotiation, unfortunately, are into a very serious deadlock, and instead for both the sides coming closer, rather both the sides are distancing from one another. And the support that these negotiations had inside the Afghanistan community is weakening every day. Particularly there are very intense operations from both sides against one another, and that's the reason why the differences at the beginning that could have been on the basis of the negotiation or as to who would be leading and as to what and who will be doing the interpretations. There were different reasons that had delayed the negotiation, but the fact that now that Biden is come, even if it is in a tactical manner, the negotiations will be delayed. And I hope that it will not be that we will lose this the final hope and optimism that we have. There is a possibility that the other countries will host this and that the process will continue. But overall, as for the United States of America, is concerned, they have a very key position, because anything they do could be. Anything they do, if it is not properly calculated, sort of to say, could be harmful. Okay. Ustad Saniq Zai's assessment is that a lot of people do not have the same level of expectation and hope from the negotiation. So what do you say, respected Mutmain? Unfortunately, yeah. The expectation that the Afghans and the world had from the intra-Afghan negotiations, that with this the war will reduce, the conflict will reduce, and the fact that we will have lasting peace. Unfortunately, the concerns are increasing. War has increased instead of peace. With the arrival of Biden, I don't think that the entire process will be affected negatively, but this will be up to the Afghans to see as to how Afghans can utilize this golden opportunity. The challenge is that it's been 2 weeks and the face-to-face talks have not yet started. 2 weeks to 2 months, but the face-to-face talks have not yet started between Afghanistan and Taliban. US and Qatar, that is the host country, might be suggesting or would suggest that maybe there should be facilitation or mediation, or maybe they could put some pressure on both the sides. And from my viewpoint, I think Taliban have shown a green signal to that. So that they enter into the negotiation. The challenge or the problem is that Taliban is saying that the basis of the basis have to be that U.S.-Taliban agreement. That's what the Taliban are saying. But the Afghanistan team is saying that our legal basis should be the Afghanistan. Well, let me ask you a question at this point, respected Mutmain. So the contract, he's kind of completing his words, but couldn't get it. So the fact that you are saying that the negotiation have to be intra-Afghan negotiation. Now, the important thing that is inside the Afghanistan society, and the political expert, for instance, are saying why Taliban say that their basis have to be the agreement between the United States of America and Taliban. So you're talking about the agreement, right? Which was announced through a declaration, or is it an agreement, the details of which still have not been shared? So what do you think Taliban is saying? See, one of the things that have to be really clear at this point, respected Ustad is there, respected Sajjad is there. One thing is an agreement, right? And the other thing is a statement or joint statement from the legal at the principal's viewpoint. If you see it, there are two different things. The United States of America wanted, and at the same time it was insisted by the government of Afghanistan and also by the United States of America for such a contract to be made by the Afghanistan government. But Taliban opposed this, and it was that if we are to sign an agreement in the month of February, it had to be signed with Taliban only. So that was why only then the Americans and at the same time the Afghan government accepted the agreement between the Taliban and the US. And it was just a statement between the US and Afghanistan, I think. So the statement is not a binding document, but a contract is a binding document. You can anytime just revoke the statement. Now, the fact that this thing is happened, the America wanted, and this must have been their plan, that in the intra-Afghan talks, US should mediate. And Taliban already knew that. now that America is kind of frustrated that their mediation is not being accepted. So my information is that now America will be putting pressure on the Afghan government. That agreement, which was between the Afghanistan and the Taliban, which was between Taliban and the U.S., for that has to be the basis, or maybe some flexibility Taliban might show in that as well. All right, Mr. Sajadi, you accept that the basis for the basis for the negotiation have to be that agreement between the U.S. and Taliban. Do you agree with this? Because as Mr. Mutmain said, and as he quoted, the fact that how in Kabul, what Kabul issued on that day was just a statement, and that can be revoked very easily. But then a U.S. Taliban agreement is a bilateral thing. Well, we have to look at it from the international law viewpoint. If we look at it from the international law viewpoint, the government of Afghanistan, which I mean, uh, it is a government that has the sovereignty which has been officially recognized. So you're looking at this, it has the political representation, and it's in of the Taliban is just an agreement with a movement, and it does not create any binding kind of a conditionality on it. And on the other hand, the fact that the government of Afghanistan, that is now, if the basis from Taliban are that the agreement they have signed with the United States of America, or the agreement with the United States of America, well then on the other side is the government. The government of Afghanistan has a bilateral security agreement with the United States of America. So I think from the legal viewpoint, so you're talking about you're talking about the Kabul-Washington security agreement. Yeah, see, you have an official agreement between the two countries that has been signed, and there too there are so many points with regards to joint cooperations, and between both the countries. So how about that from the international laws viewpoint? If that is for the U.S. Taliban agreement to be a basis, then how about that agreement with the Afghanistan and the United States of America? So from the international laws viewpoint, this is very much clear. The government of Afghanistan, with from a legal viewpoint, it has signed an agreement with the United States of America, which has been recognized by the other powers, by the other countries. But for Taliban, a political movement that does not have the international sovereignty and has not been internationally recognized, an agreement that it has signed, and it's not a binding thing on the third party, on the third side, which is the government of Afghanistan. So Afghanistan has not been have not shown any consent as for the signing of this agreement between the U.S. and Taliban is concerned. Now, talking about another thing, if you say if the legal basis is appropriate or not, when we talk about these negotiations, see, it's an intra-Afghan talk. It's a conflict between the Afghans, and Afghans have to sit in between them and solve this matter. Now, the fact that you sort of raised this point about the agreement of Taliban with the United States of America does not carry a political logic, a political rationale, because this internal conflict of the Afghans, intra-Afghan negotiations, means that the Afghans will have to sit and sort of find a solution for this. Now, the fact that they have come and raised this point, I think it's a mistake. Now, they're trying to kind of delegitimize the government of Afghanistan. On the other hand, so they are trying to show off this case as such that the government of Afghanistan does not have the authority to do the negotiation, or there is not a side that we are to have a negotiation with, as they have repeatedly announced their position as such, and they are still insisting that their side is the United States of America as for the negotiation with whom is concerned. So, well, if that is the case, then it's a different thing. When you're talking about the intra-Afghan talks, intra-Afghan negotiations, there's a legal person from the United Nations and the other countries of the region. people of Afghanistan living under this regime. So it has to be tried for and have to be found a solution for it with a goodwill so that formally these talks can start. Now, from the very beginning, if you say that the legal basis for our talks, if that is with the US Taliban kind of an agreement, or if you're referring to the Hanafi jurisprudence or Hanafi school of thought, it was not really the place for it. Yeah, then during the negotiations, maybe in a serious matter, when you have the peace of mind, you possibly could talk about him and could share your viewpoints and could try for making sure that you can settle your differences and agree on the commonalities. Thank you. Ustad Stanik Zai, why Taliban are emphasizing for the basis of the negotiation be the agreement between the United States of America and Taliban? What interest do you think Taliban have on emphasizing on this matter? Well, see, there some of the technical points have already been shared from the legal viewpoint, as what Mr. Mutmain said. So far, Taliban have signed an agreement with the United States of America, and Taliban have brought themselves into this legitimate, into this discussion of legitimacy. It has been approved, right? So, Mr. Sajadi will remember during the Cold War, we had the fourth legal person. The bloc of socialists will emphasize more on that, and we recognize that as the legal person. Now the question is, Taliban, okay, under what name have they entered into an agreement with the Taliban? How US has entered into an agreement with the Taliban? Under what name? And they try to take leverage or use this as a leverage to say or take privileges from the government of Afghanistan. The agreement that has been signed with the Taliban, the government of Afghanistan accepted that indirectly. Releasing the prisoners meant that agreement has already been accepted by the government of Afghanistan. The other thing is, to the extent that I know, the Afghan team is also, for example, presented this procedure and the fact that say that they do not officially recognize the government of Afghanistan. That's not right. That's not right because they are already into the negotiations with them. Now it's and when the fact that the government of Afghanistan would say that we don't recognize Taliban, so why would the government of Afghanistan be entering into the negotiations with them? So all these complications create crisis. So from my viewpoint, the fact that the Taliban do not officially recognize the constitution, do not officially recognize the government of Afghanistan, and then there is a deadlock in the negotiation, and on the other hand, the government of Afghanistan has not accepted that as the basis, what they are emphasizing on, and the reason is that and Dr. Sajadi just said that because the government of Afghanistan has an agreement signed, bilateral security agreement, with the United States of America. So there's so many things that can create problems. So my viewpoint will be that we living with three values. Religion, culture, values, and the structures that we have now. For the modern structures we have, do we have a problem? And how about if we have a problem with the modern structures, we have to go and refer to the previous values and try and find a solution for them. And then it's very much important that from the negotiation viewpoint, you have to kind of show flexibility and compromise. So there has been pressure from Taliban on the international forces withdrawal from Afghanistan, and there's been a strong emphasis. What's their position on that agreement now? If even if the United States of America will leave, the United States of America will still have an agreement, right, with the government of Afghanistan. So how about that? because Afghanistan's government already signed a bilateral security agreement with the United States of America. Now, one thing has to be clear: when you when there are two agreements made one after another, so the earlier one is already revoked. Now, the security agreement contract that Afghanistan government has signed with the United States of America during the time of Obama, now the statement that government of Afghanistan asked for it to be the basis would mean that the security agreement, the earlier one of the times of Obama, will be affected, revoked, or acceptable or unacceptable, because the statement very clearly says that the Americans will leave Afghanistan. And at the same time, the agreement that the Taliban have signed with the American, it says that the Americans will leave Afghanistan, and in the future Islamic system of Afghanistan, these commitments they will be making. So which means that the system that they had before is not accepted now in the agreement that it says, meaning that the agreement that has been made between them or the current government is not any more acceptable, because it very clearly says the future Islamic government will take these responsibilities. That's one thing. It has to be made clear, meaning that the Americans have come to this conclusion that the agreement that was made until 2024, now in Taliban's agreement, it's very much clear that it cannot be implemented again. Now, if you look at the statement of the government of Afghanistan, except that it very clearly says that the future system will be doing this or that, and that the Americans in 14 months will be leaving Afghanistan. Now, the fact that why Taliban are emphasizing on that, Taliban are emphasizing because they don't want for something have to start from scratch. I mean, for 1 month, for 1 year and some months, they have already bargained with the Americans about the future of Afghanistan, have shared reasons and arguments with one another. Now, if this starts again with the government of Afghanistan, so it will again take the same amount of time and might not even reach an agreement. For instance, if we may accept for this agreement not being acceptable between America and Taliban, now these agreement, America, Russia, China have supported them all. I mean, all of them have supported it, and also the UN Security Council has supported it. Now, if the government of Afghanistan would not accept this agreement, then why 5,000 prisoners were released? Now, if the government of Afghanistan was not by the will of the Americans, why would it release Anas Haqqani and the others? Meaning that whatever the Americans want, they can exert pressure on the Afghanistan government and can make him accept it. Now, the real thing is, if the Taliban and the Americans agreement is accepted, it means that the Afghan government will not be legitimate for another 5 years. They will not be able to complete their 5-year term. So Dr. Ashraf Ghani knows this. If it is accepted with the Taliban, it will be that it has to allow for another regime to start, and it has also been said in that agreement, when the talks start between the Afghan government and the Taliban, as a goodwill, the Afghan government will release another 11,000 prisoners in 4 months. The Afghan government knows if that agreement is accepted, it will be that 11,000 Talib forces will have to be released. So these are the challenges why the Afghan government is not accepting it. But I'm sure that the pressure from the America, pressure from the region, and pressure from the international community, either these negotiation will be based on the agreement between the US and Taliban, or this negotiation will fail among the Afghans. But the agreement between the US and Taliban can be implemented to a larger extent. Ustad Sajjadi, do you agree with Mutma'in, who said that after the after the agreement, so it says that it is that, as he said, that it could be revoked or probable changes could come. So from the international law viewpoint, how do you see what Mr. Mutmain said? Unfortunately, international law has I mean, when you talk about the international law, one of the features of the international law is you see it's binding and it has to be implemented.
حقوق بین الملل همواره تحت تاثیر بین الملل قرار داره.
Yeah, there are recommendations that are made, and
حقوق بین الملل با ملی زمان اجرایی حوزه حقوق بین الملل هست. اساساً دیدگاه ریالیستی معتقد است که
in certain countries might do certain things. As what you mentioned, and respected Ustad Nasrullah also mentioned about the gaps. I think with regards to Afghanistan, how the US has treated this, there's a paradox. There's a paradox how the US has approached and like within the bilateral security agreement, and then on the other side is the bilateral agreement of the Taliban and the US, and then these two from the legal essence viewpoint do not come together. So I think at the end, if we realistically, for instance, analyze, yeah, the US will be determining the legal documents that the US has signed with the Afghanistan government. Ustad Sadiq Zai, one of the things that is on the strategic agreement is to have bases in Afghanistan. Now that from the legal viewpoint, and how Taliban have acted against this matter, because some believe that the Taliban are just blind seeing this, blind siding this to say, but they're saying, okay, the last soldier also even will have to leave Afghanistan, but then how about these bases? So like they're not really looking at it. Well, respected Forotan, and before I respond to your question, I would like to just quickly focus on this. We have two agreements with the Americans. One is the strategic agreement for cooperation, and in that the security agreement has been predicted, meaning that there are two separate documents. In both the document says that by the 2024 strategic cooperation between the U.S. government and the Afghanistan government shall exist. Yeah. Now, as it was earlier said, and respected Dr. Sajjadi mentioned, you know that what Mr. Mutmain was saying, that if it is that a new agreement comes and then the previous agreement possession can be questioned in the international law, it's not like that, with due respect. It's in the law. When a new law comes, then the previous law is completely revoked or kind of partially revoked. So absolute revoking or partially revoking that. So if there is any other agreement, if there were another agreement like signed and that will have been fine, and it had to be clear from the legal viewpoint. So one big problem is that first, the Taliban group in the international law as an international legal person, if they are there as an international legal person or not, if they are, then the agreements that they are signing, their agreements will be legitimate, and the other party will have to implement them. Otherwise, since such agreements are not binding, they're only political agreements. So, yeah, so the current agreement, US-Taliban agreement, so from your definition viewpoint, is a political agreement, right? Absolutely. Based on the political interest of the United States of America, this has been prepared. And with regards to your question, the fact that about the basis of the United States of America, which based on the agreement between the US and Afghanistan governments, if that should exist or not. I mean, now unless we find a specific definition, it's very difficult to find an answer for this question, because unless we find a specific definition for that. So we uh, uh, I mean they might resist, and because if it is in their interest, they will want to keep their bases based on that agreement, and if they will want to just leave, then they will rely on the agreement, which is Taliban. So they will just see which interest best serves them. It's actually both the sides. The Afghans will face a deadlock. I'll repeat myself. Unless Taliban have a legal definition in the international law, unless Taliban it is internationally defined in the international law, so it is difficult to, for instance, define this. And at the same time, for instance, now with Taliban, an agreement has been signed in Kabul. A declaration, a statement has been issued. Yeah, statement is a weaker document, but if the Americans will want to misuse it, will make their interpretation, as Dr. Sajjadi said, and they don't have a very strong binding force that one can raise, for instance, at an international level. Thank you. If we talk about the Qatar negotiation, Mr. Mutmain, if I'm not mistaken, you are in Doha, and what's happening in Doha? If you may, if it is that, if we could know the two main demands from Taliban to break this deadlock. So what are those? Maybe if we could hear from you, what will they be? No, I'm not in Qatar. I'm in Gulf, just to avoid misunderstanding. Gulf is a big place. Which part of Gulf exactly? This issue that was mentioned of the agreement of the Afghan government with the United States of America, and also in the joint statement has been very clearly said, and the Security Council has also accepted that the U.S. will reduce their military presence, and once the intra-Afghan negotiations start, and that the Afghans reach an agreement between them, the Americans will fully leave Afghanistan. So this means that the agreement, which is between Taliban and the U.S., it shows that one of the agreements, sorry, it seems like U.S. is not committed to Shindar, Nangarhar, Khost, as far the bases are concerned, Kandahar, and some of the others. Bagram. So the Americans have already emptied. 5 bases have already been emptied, and 7 or 9 bases were accepted with them, or 7 bases were accepted with them. So those 2 left will also be emptied. So the agreement that America had signed with Afghanistan is not anymore committed to. So that security agreement, America is not anymore committed to, and those equipment that should have been left for the Afghan government are being practically given to Pakistan government. So how can we say that that agreement will be implemented? And the other thing is that Taliban know that America has never remained committed to the international commitments. So Taliban don't have much of an expectation. So had America not been compelled for this, will have not really done this agreement. Trump tweeted that they will delay it, but they finally had to. They were forced to say, and they came to Taliban. Taliban didn't go to them. Now, if the Americans are not going to remain committed to this agreement, so Taliban don't have any loss. Taliban will make gains out of this. So it's good that the American government and the Afghanistan government understand this. For the agreement that's been made between the US and Taliban has to be relied on, has to be implemented. Now, if certain circles will want for this agreement to break, or if the American will go back, so there will be war in Afghanistan, and Taliban will not be scared of this, and unfortunately the war will continue. So I say the better thing is that it's important that our agreement is implemented it's important that the agreement with Taliban is implemented, and instead for Qatar, India, Pakistan, Iran interfering, it's important that we reach an agreement on a system as such that the 40-year war will end in Afghanistan. One other question that I have, Mr. Mutmain. You are saying these things. There's already war across Afghanistan, and there's been big attacks in the capital and the biggest cities. And Taliban are not accepting the responsibility for it. Now, one big question for the people of Afghanistan is Now that the Taliban are like unless this big part of war ends, if Taliban don't end this war, so what would be the benefit of this agreement? So like these attacks that are recently happening, uh, aren't Taliban doing these attacks? Because if then Taliban are not doing them, so I mean, Taliban had said that if the agreement is signed between Taliban and Americans, 80% of the violence will reduce. Yes, the violence between American and Taliban have reduced, and it's very little. But unfortunately, recently there's more intense war from both sides. There's more intensity from the Taliban and also from the Afghanistan government side on the war. Now, yeah, that's right. You're not killing Americans, that's right, but the recent report of UNAMA shows since the agreement with the Americans have been signed, since then, the level of violence has increased. It's been high in the last 6 months. More than 6,000 civilians have been killed and injured. Well, it has to be made clear that I do not represent anyone. I am here as an Afghan, and I'm only expressing my view. I regret that the war has increased. The Taliban had told us that if the agreement is signed between Taliban and US, 80% of the war will reduce. But unfortunately, this war has not reduced 80%, and it has rather increased. And the attacks that are happening now in Afghanistan, most of these attacks are done through the politicians. I'm sure that these operations are being done by those countries that want the war and continuation of war in Afghanistan, and they oppose peace. And without a doubt, the recent attack that happened at Kabul University or any attacks of the same sort, I can fully say that neither Taliban want it nor Taliban are involved in them. You're saying Taliban have done it for many years. How can you prove? I want to ask. The attacks that the Taliban have done for many years and have taken the responsibility for those attacks, how can you just at once get people accept that the Taliban are issuing a statement and they are condemning such attacks? So how is that? For 20 years there was war. In 20 years, Mr. Stanikzai is the university lecturer. Show me one example where Taliban have attacked or accepted any attack of the Kabul University. We would like to hear from you, respected Ustad Stanikzai. Tell me. Yeah. I will ask. There have been thousands of other attacks where people have been killed, where civilians have been killed, and Taliban have taken the responsibility for those attacks. Now, the Taliban are not accepting the responsibility for such attacks, Ustad, and they're saying that sometimes they are condemning the attacks together with the others. So the effect of these negotiations and agreement, what will it be? I want to ask this from you. Now, the fact that there's no reduction in violence, and if the war is not reducing, so what's the benefit or what's the point of agreeing with Taliban? I said it at the beginning of our discussion that unfortunately that the attacks that have happened in the last 2 months and the level of violence and the level of war and the level of attacks in the different parts of Afghanistan have increased, and there's no doubt that the government of Afghanistan and Taliban have fought against one another and are fighting against one another. This is very clear that this will have negative effect on the negotiations, and we should also remember that this will bring the credibility of both sides down. I mean, as you said, and it's the people of Afghanistan who actually suffer. It's the civilians who suffer. It's the civilians who are actually the victims and are falling into further destruction. And this war will not give any result, and it will endanger the negotiations, and they will lose the public support or public mindset. So from this viewpoint, and taking into consideration the fact that there's a high level of violence, so the future of the negotiations that is now already facing a deadlock, and that there is no hope for it inside Afghanistan and at the same time outside Afghanistan. So how do you see it? Bloodshed exists, and there's blood from everywhere, from the sky, from the earth, and there are civilian places attacked, people killed on bombs and explosions. How do you see the future? What will happen? I hope that I'm not being very negative, but I don't have very serious hopes, because as Mr. Mutmain earlier mentioned, for now, in Doha, it's that as a result of pressure, the negotiation might continue, but it is going to lose the nature of intra-Afghanism if it's America or any other countries that is going to put pressure on him. So I believe that it is already into a deadlock. It is already into crisis. As I earlier mentioned, people are not trusting it, and it seems like the war has intensified in Afghanistan. If this process is not revisited, and if with the current situation it will not move forward. Second, what I would very clearly like to say is that the negotiation team, which is gone from the Afghanistan side and representing the Afghanistan government, has proven that they do not have the capacity. They do not have the capacity to convince the other side, because it's like the political or religious groups, and then they are going, and part of them are even raising, talking about the interest of individuals in groups. So I think it requires that we have a more smaller group of negotiation teams, but more national team, so that it could reach an agreement with the other side. My personal belief is that with this composition, with this situation of war, and with these without agenda sort of a situation, the negotiations will fail. And as we are a victim of war, this war will continue. And in this, the interest of the countries, the war will unfortunately intensify. Yeah, America has got an agreement with both the sides. They will just use whichever side they feel more comfortable using. Mr. Mutmain, from your viewpoint, do you think Doha negotiations have failed? There is no hope? One thing that has to be paid attention to, and I hope that it has to be thought about, Dr. Ashraf Ghani and Dr. Abdullah reached an agreement, political agreement, and Dr. Abdullah was elected as the president of the Reconciliation Council. As long as the respected doctor has a symbolic role, as long as has a, and does not practically come into the peace process, unless one side, if it is only left to the one side of the government, which is the President Ashraf Ghani, and unless Dr. Abdullah comes into this, there will not be progress. It is expected that Dr. Abdullah will take his responsibility and will have the support from the international community and will take practical steps into the peace process. Now, I'll again say, unless this is failed, it is that these negotiations will not give result. Yeah. I think, respected Dr. Sajadi, we do not have any more with us. We don't have a lot of time for doing a quick wrap-up. Yeah, is that right? We were not able to follow up with respected Dr. Sajadi. It seems like we lost his connection. Okay, fine. How much time do we have? You have another 8 minutes. I think that I think it had already finished from my viewpoint. Yeah, from 5 to 6, right? So, it was from 5 to 6. Saying like, yeah, so we just have to sort of carry on. Respected Mutmain, I didn't get the answer. Mr. Stanix, I think that there's no hope with Doha, and that both the sides seems like that there's a deadlock. Do you agree? I'm not pessimistic. I'm not pessimistic. Why not? How? As I earlier said, that the facilitators have come to this the facilitators have come to this belief that they should exert pressure. The fact that will it not affect the intra-Afghanism of these negotiations if there are people from the outside? Taliban are still saying that they are ready for the negotiation, provided it is based on the agreement between the US and Taliban. So if there's a pressure on the Afghan government. The Afghan government in the last 20 years have witnessed such. The Afghanistan government has also already witnessed this. The Afghan government will have not released the prisoners had there not been pressure from the America on him. And then again, maybe President Ashraf Ghani will be interested in completing his 5-year term, and America wants such system where Afghans reach peace. One other thing that we might talk about here is that, as you said, that the war continues, right? If you talk about people, Mr. Mutmain, based on the agreement that the Taliban have with the Americans, they're not killing Americans. So how do you differentiate? Now an Afghan, as a civilian, is being killed. The recent one has been the 3 civilians of the Afghanistan bank. Now, who's going to be accountable for these terrorist attacks? Who's accountable for these terrorist attacks? Now, if you look at the recent history, whenever peace negotiations or peace talks, if they were in Kandahar, if they were in Herat, if they were in Nangarhar, like before and after of such events, there have been such attacks. I'll tell you of an example. Dr. Abdul Baqi Amin wanted a new, a peace, together with the Qatar Institute for Studies, wanted to start a process and became a victim. Now, the fact that the peace negotiations have started and will give results, so either Kabul University will be attacked, without a doubt. Dr. Siawash, Yama Siawash, Taliban didn't even know that he had returned back to Kabul. So, of course, this was done by someone who wanted to disrupt the peace process. During the time of Dr. Najib, when he was taking actions towards peace and taking steps towards peace, he was being opposed. Mujahideen, Hikmat Yar and Ustad Rabbani, when they were to, for instance, make some progress on the peace talks. So, Mutmain Saib, you mean that the Taliban groups are not doing this, right? I'm sure that at this point of time, which is targeting the civilians or target killing, they're not doing it. Taliban are not doing it. This is being done by the ones who oppose peace. Now, at this situation, as my last question from respected Ustad Sanikzai, now, in this situation, that the people of Afghanistan are being only killed, and Taliban not taking responsibility, and there's no other group that is taking responsibility for this as well. Now, how do you see the future of the people of Afghanistan? Really, how do you see the future of the people of Afghanistan? Do you think, with this way of becoming a victim and the fact that the bloodshed is increasing, civilians are being killed, are we going to get somewhere? Or is it that the more blood is being shed, the stronger position we'll have at the negotiation table? Unfortunately, as in the last 42 years of the crisis of Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan have remained being the victims. Now, this situation that is going on, and unfortunately, the groups from the inside and outside are involved in this. I believe that unless this is stopped, we will see even worse tragedies. And unfortunately, it is more on the power, and people of Afghanistan are not going to think about this. People of Afghanistan are going to actually think about how they can live, how they can survive. So my belief is there's only one way for the people of Afghanistan, and that one way for the people of Afghanistan is that the ideologies, mindset, tribal, ethnical, and other issues like discrimination, you leave them all aside, because unfortunately it's these discriminations that they're using against the people of Afghanistan. So it says that you have to keep everything aside. I pray for the souls of the martyrs of the Kabul University attack. We hope that we need to take our nation out of this ignorance that has ruled them for 42 years, and that has been the different sorts of ideologies and have forced them towards victimization. So we need to inform our people and make sure that our youth learn and our youth become committed. And we need to also protect our religious values. Thank you very much.